December 20th, 1943. The skies over Bremen, Germany. Second Lieutenant Charles Chuck Jerger banks his P-51 Mustang hard left as tracer rounds slice through the air where his cockpit was milliseconds before. He's 19 years old. This is his 8th combat mission. His hands are shaking so badly he can barely grip the stick. The Messerschmitt Bf-109 on his tail is flown by Unreicher Ludwig Franciscet, a veteran with 11 confirmed kills. Franciscet has been hunting Allied pilots for 2 years. He knows every maneuver in the book. He's already positioning for the killing shot. Standard doctrine is clear. Maintain formation. Execute coordinated attacks. Never break away from your wingman. The Army Air Forces has spent millions developing these tactics. Fighter groups practice them relentlessly. Survival depends on discipline and following the manual. Jorger's fuel gauge is dropping. His ammunition counter shows 60 rounds remaining. The nearest friendly aircraft is 3 meters away. By every calculation, he should be dead in the next 30 seconds. What Franciscet doesn't know is that Jorger is about to do something that violates every rule in the fighter pilot's handbook. Something so reckless, so counterintuitive that it will be dismissed as impossible by senior officers when he reports it. Something that will accidentally revolutionize air combat for the next 80 years. But first, we need to understand why American fighter pilots were dying at catastrophic rates in the winter of 1943. By December 1943, the United States Army Air Forces faces a crisis that threatens the entire strategic bombing campaign over Europe. The numbers are devastating. During the Schweinfurt-Regensburg raids in August 1943, the 8th Air Force loses 60 bombers in a single day. 600 men killed or captured. In October, another raid on Schweinfurt cost 62 more bombers. The loss rate exceeds 20% on deep penetration missions. At this rate, bomber crews have virtually no chance of surviving their required 25-mission tour. The problem is range. P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings can escort bombers to the German border, but they lack the fuel capacity to penetrate deep into Reich territory. Once the escorts turn back, Luftwaffe fighters swarm the bomber formations like wolves on wounded prey. The solution seems obvious. Develop long-range escort fighters. North American Aviation has delivered the P-51 Mustang, which has the range to reach Berlin and back. But there's a second, more insidious problem. American fighter doctrine is fundamentally flawed. The tactics manual written by senior officers who learned to fly in the 1920s emphasizes formation flying and coordinated attacks. Fighter pilots are taught to maintain strict positioning, execute textbook maneuvers, and never break formation discipline. Individual initiative is discouraged. The manual is gospel. German pilots are destroying American fighters using a completely different approach. Luftwaffe doctrine, refined through years of combat over Spain, Poland, France, and Russia, emphasizes aggressive individual initiative. German aces like Adolf Galland and Gunther have developed the finger four formation and energy fighting tactics that give them enormous advantages. The kill ratio tells the story. In late 1943, experienced Luftwaffe pilots are averaging 3 to 4 kills for every aircraft they lose. Some aces like Egon Mayer and Walter Notny have kill ratios exceeding 10 to 1. American fighter commanders know something is wrong. After-action reports consistently show American pilots being outmaneuvered despite flying aircraft with comparable or superior performance, but the solution eludes them. More training and formation flying doesn't help. Neither does stricter adherence to the manual. The consensus among senior officers is clear. American pilots need better aircraft, more flight hours, and stricter discipline. The tactics are sound. The problem must be execution. This assumption is about to be shattered by a teenager from Hamlin, West Virginia, who barely graduated from high school. Charles Elwood Jorger is not supposed to be here. He grows up in the Appalachian foothills during the Great Depression. His family is poor. His father works in the coal mines and natural gas fields. Chuck hunts squirrels and rabbits to put food on the table, developing exceptional eyesight and hand-eye coordination. He can spot a squirrel in a tree at 300 yards. He enlists in the Army Air Forces in September 1941 as an aircraft mechanic. He has no college education, no wealthy family connections, no prior flying experience. He's assigned to maintain P-39 Air Bra at Tonopah, Nevada. In July 1942, the Air Forces faces a desperate pilot shortage. The training pipeline cannot produce pilots fast enough to replace combat losses. The service launches the Flying Sergeant program, allowing enlisted men to train his pilots without officer commissions. Jorger volunteers immediately. His superiors are skeptical. His educational background is marginal. His mechanical aptitude is excellent. But flying requires split-second decision-making and spatial reasoning that cannot be taught. Most washout candidates come from his demographic. He proves them wrong. At flight school in California and Arizona, Jorger demonstrates natural flying ability that instructors find remarkable. His vision is measured at 20/10, twice as acute as normal. He can spot enemy aircraft before anyone else in the formation. He graduates in March 1943 and receives his commission as a flight officer. By November 1943, Jorger arrives in England assigned to the 363rd Fighter Squadron, 357th Fighter Group. He has logged approximately 270 flight hours. Most of his squadron mates have college degrees. Many come from wealthy families. Some have private pilot licenses from before the war. Jorger is the kid from West Virginia who talks with an Appalachian drawl and lacks social polish. He's assigned aircraft number 436A763, a P-51B Mustang. He names Glamorous Glenn after his girlfriend back home, Glennis Dick House. On December 20th, 1943, he flies his 8th combat mission, a bomber escort to Bremen. This is when everything changes. The moment of insight comes not from careful study or brilliant analysis. It comes from pure survival instinct when Ludwig Franciscott's Bf-109 latches onto his tail and Jorger realizes he's about to die. Franciscott fires a burst. Cannon shells rip past Jorger's canopy. The German pilot is closing for the kill, positioning for a deflection shot that will shred the Mustang's engine. Jorger's training screams at him to maintain altitude, execute a standard evasive turn, try to reach friendly aircraft. Every instinct says stay high where the Mustang has performance advantages. Instead, he does something insane. He rolls inverted and pulls the stick back, diving nearly vertical toward the German countryside, 7,000 feet below. The airspeed indicator spins past 400 miles per hour, past 450. The Mustang's wings begin to buffet as it approaches its structural limits. The dive angle is so steep that Jorger's vision begins to gray from negative G-forces. This is suicide. Everyone knows German fighters can outdive American aircraft. The Bf-109's fuel-injected engine gives it enormous advantages in negative G maneuvers. Diving away from a 109 is exactly what you're not supposed to do. But Jorger isn't thinking about doctrine. He's reacting like a West Virginia boy who's hunted his entire life, using terrain, using speed, using every advantage available. The Mustang's Packard-built Merlin engine with its 2-stage supercharger performs differently than anyone expected at high speed. As Jorger screams toward the deck, The Mustang actually accelerates faster than the pursuing Bf 109. The airspeed hits 500 miles per hour. The controls are nearly locked solid from aerodynamic pressure. Francis Gitt follows, firing repeatedly, but his rounds are falling behind. The Mustang is pulling away. At 1,500 feet, Jerger hauls back on the stick with both hands. The G-forces slam him into his seat. His vision tunnels. The Mustang's wings flex upward, stressed nearly to failure. The aircraft bottoms out at 800 feet, traveling at 480 miles per hour. Francis Gitt tries to follow. The Bf-109 pulls out at 600 feet, but the maneuver has bled off his energy. His airspeed has dropped to 320 miles per hour. Jerger levels out, looks back, and sees something that shouldn't be possible. The German fighter that was killing him 30 seconds ago is now behind him, slow and vulnerable. Francis Gitt is desperately trying to regain speed and altitude. Jerger reverses, climbs slightly, and positions behind the Bf-109. At 400 yards, he fires a 3-second burst. 50 caliber rounds tear into the German fighter wing, rout, and fuselage. The Bf-109 rolls left, trailing smoke and spirals toward the ground. Jerger has just executed the first recorded high-speed yo-yo maneuver in combat aviation history. He doesn't know that's what it's called. He doesn't even fully understand what he's done. He just knows he survived when he shouldn't have. When he lands at RAF Leon and reports the engagement, his squadron commander's reaction is immediate. That is absolutely impossible. The 109 outperforms us in every dive scenario. You must have misidentified the aircraft type. The intelligence officer's report is skeptical. The gun camera footage is inconclusive. The dive was too violent. The camera couldn't track properly. Several senior pilots review Jerger's account and dismiss it as confused memory from combat stress. You cannot outdive a Messerschmitt, says Major Thomas Hayes, the group operations officer. Their fuel injection system gives them decisive advantages in negative G maneuvers. This is established fact. The doctrine is clear. American fighters should maintain altitude advantage and use coordinated attacks. Diving away from enemy fighters is explicitly discouraged in the tactics manual. What Jerger describes violates fundamental principles that senior officers learned at the Air War Tactical School. But Jerger isn't alone. Over the next 3 weeks, other pilots begin reporting similar experiences. Lieutenant William Wisner executes a near-vertical dive to escape 2 FW-190s and discovers the same phenomenon. At extreme speeds, the Mustang's performance characteristics change dramatically. Captain Don Blakesley, commander of the 4th Fighter Group and one of the most experienced American pilots in Europe, decides to investigate. On January 11, 1944, he takes a P-51B to 25,000 feet over the English Channel and executes a series of high-speed dive tests. The results are startling. Below 20,000 feet in dives exceeding 450 miles per hour, the Mustang accelerates faster than any German fighter. The 2-stage supercharger designed for high-altitude performance creates unexpected advantages at high speed and low altitude. Blakesley writes a detailed report and submits it to AK Fighter Command Headquarters. The response is immediate and hostile. At a commander meeting on January 18, 1944, Blakesley presents his findings. The room erupts. Senior officers who have been flying since the 1920s are being told that fundamental assumptions about fighter combat are wrong, that a barely educated teenager from West Virginia has discovered something they missed. This is reckless cowboy flying, says Colonel Hubert Zena, commander of the 56th Fighter Group. We cannot abandon coordinated tactics for individual heroics. That's what gets pilots killed. Your data is flawed, argues another colonel. German fighters have fuel injection. We have carburetors. Physics doesn't lie. The meeting threatens to end with Blakesley's report being filed away and forgotten. The bureaucratic inertia is enormous. Changing doctrine requires admitting previous doctrine was wrong. Careers are built on the existing system. Then Major General William Keep Tainer, commander of E-8 Fighter Command, intervenes. Keeper is a maverick. He learned to fly in 1916. He's flown combat missions in World War I. He's watched too many young pilots die following tactics that don't work. He's willing to challenge conventional wisdom if the evidence supports it. Gentlemen, Kempner says, I don't care if this contradicts everything we learned at tactical school. I care about kill ratios. Captain Belize Group has the highest success rate in the theater. If his pilots are surviving by breaking the rules, then maybe our rules are wrong. Keeper orders immediate testing. Over the next 2 weeks, test pilots put P-51Bs through extreme dive profiles. The data confirms Blakesley's findings. At speeds above 450 miles per hour, the Mustang's acceleration in a dive exceeds that of the BF-109 and FW-90. On February 3, 1944, Keep Tainer issues a revolutionary directive. Fighter pilots are authorized to use individual initiative and aggressive tactics, including high-speed diving attacks. Formation discipline is de-emphasized. Pilots are encouraged to exploit the Mustang's high-speed performance. The old guard is appalled, but Keep Tainer has the authority and he uses it. Before we see how this changes, the air war? I need to tell you about this channel's mission. We bring you stories of innovation and courage that changed history. Stories the textbooks often miss. If you value deep research and documentary quality content, please hit that subscribe button. 92% of you watch without subscribing, but your subscription helps us justify the research hours these episodes require. Thank you. The new tactics are tested immediately. On February 20th, 1944, the 8th Air Force launches Big Week, a massive campaign to destroy German aircraft production. Over 1,000 bombers strike targets deep in Germany, escorted by P-51 Mustangs, flying with Keep Tainer's new doctrine. March 3, 1944, the sky over Berlin. Jurger, now with 12 kills, leads a flight of 4 Mustangs at 28,000 feet. Below them, 300 B-7 bombers are approaching the German capital. Luftwaffe fighters are rising to intercept. Bf-19S and FW-190S from JG-3 and JG-11, some of Germany's most elite units. Overlit Heinsberg, an ace with 170 kills, leads a swarm of 4 Bf-109G6. He spots Jurger's flight and begins a climbing attack, planning to use his altitude advantage for a diving pass on the bombers. Jurger sees them first. His exceptional vision gives him 30 seconds of warning. Instead of maintaining formation and executing a coordinated defense, he does something that would have been forbidden 3 months earlier. He rolls inverted and dives, not away from the German fighters, but toward them, building enormous speed. His wingman, Lieutenant Clarence Bud Anderson, follows without hesitation. The other 2 Mustangs maintain high cover. Bear sees the Americans diving and assumes they're fleeing. He adjusts his approach to the bombers. This is exactly what Jurger wants. At 600 miles per hour, a speed that makes the controls feel like they're welded solid. Jurger pulls up underneath Bear's formation. The Bf-109s are traveling at 380 miles per hour, focused on the bombers ahead. They never see the Mustangs coming from below. Jurger fires a Toucan burst at the trailing 109. The German fighter explodes. Bear breaks hard left, but Anderson is already there firing. Bear's wingman goes down trailing fire. The remaining 2 109s dive away. Jurger and Anderson don't pursue. They zoom climb back to altitude using their massive speed advantage to regain position above the bombers. The entire engagement lasts 45 seconds. 2 German fighters destroyed. 0 American losses. The bombers continue unmolested to their target. This pattern repeats across the sky. American pilots using the new tactics are achieving kill ratios that were impossible under the old doctrine. The Luftwaffe, accustomed to predictable American formations, is suddenly facing aggressive individual attacks from unexpected angles. The numbers tell the story. In January 1944, before the new tactics, a weight fighter command's kill ratio against the Luftwaffe averages 2.1 to 1. By April 1944, after widespread adoption of energy fighting tactics, the ratio climbs to 4.3 to 1. By June, it reaches 6.1 to 1. German pilots notice immediately. Oberleut Johannes Steinhoff, a veteran ace, writes in his diary, "The American fighters have changed. They no longer fly in rigid formations. They dive from impossible altitudes at terrifying speeds. Our fuel-injected engines, which gave us such advantages, no longer matter. They are faster than us now." General Major Adolf Galland, commander of Germany's fighter forces, reports to Hermann Göring in April 1944. "The American Mustang pilots have adopted our own energy fighting tactics and improved upon them. Their aircraft's high-speed performance exceeds our capabilities. We are losing experienced pilots at an unsustainable rate." The bomber crews noticed too. Survival rates improved dramatically. Lieutenant James Howard, a B-7 pilot, writes home, "The fighter boys are different now. They don't just escort us, they hunt. The Germans are scared of them." May 8, 1944. Jurger encounters his most challenging opponent, headman Georg Peter Ehr, an ace with 36 kills, flying a Bf 109 G10, the latest variant with improved performance. The engagement happens at 24,000 feet over Brunswick. Ehr has altitude advantage and initiates a diving attack. Jurger reverses into him, forcing a head-on pass. Both pilots fire. Both miss. Ehr expects Jurger to climb away, trying to regain altitude. Instead, Jurger rolls and dives nearly vertical, building speed. Ehr follows, confident in his aircraft's diving performance. At 550 miles per hour, Jurger pulls out and reverses. Ehr tries to follow, but the G-forces are too severe. His vision grays. His pullout is shallow. When he recovers, Jurger is behind him at 400 yards. Jurger fires. Ehr's 109 takes hits in the engine and wing. Smoke pours from the cowling. Ehr manages to nurse his damaged fighter back to his airfield, but the aircraft is written off. After the war, Ehr writes, "The American pilot who damaged my aircraft on May 8, 1944, executed maneuvers I thought impossible. He dove away from me and somehow ended behind me. Our intelligence briefing said this could not happen. We were wrong." By June 1944, the Luftwaffe is in crisis. Experienced pilots are being killed faster than they can be replaced. Training programs are shortened, producing poorly prepared pilots who die on their first missions. The 8th Air Force achieves air superiority over Germany. The human cost is measurable. Bomber loss rates drop from 20% in October 1943 to less than 4% by June 1944. Thousands of air crews survive missions they would have died on under the old tactics. After the war, a B-7 pilot named Robert Morgan tracks down Jurger at an air show. Morgan flew 30 missions over Germany in 1944. He tells Jurger, "My crew calculated that we should have been shot down on our 8th mission based on 1943 loss rates. We flew 22 more after that. Because of you and pilots like you, we came home. My children exist because you figured out how to keep us alive. The impact extends beyond World War II. The energy fighting tactics accidentally discovered by Jorger and systematized by commanders like Blakesley become the foundation of modern fighter doctrine today. If you want to support this channel's deep dive research into forgotten military innovations, please click that like button and consider joining our Patreon. Your support makes these episodes possible. Charles Jagger ends World War II with 11.5 confirmed kills. He shot down once, evades capture in occupied France with help from the resistance, and returns to combat. He flies 64 missions total. After the war, he becomes a test pilot. On October 14, 1947, he breaks the sound barrier in the Bell X-1, becoming the first human to fly faster than sound. The techniques he learned in combat energy management, high-speed control, aggressive maneuvering prove essential for supersonic flight. He retires as a brigadier general in 1975. He never claims to have invented energy fighting tactics. In his autobiography, he writes, "I was just trying not to die. If that helped other pilots survive, I'm grateful. But I didn't figure anything out. I just reacted." The tactics he accidentally pioneered are still taught today. Every fighter pilot in the United States Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps learns energy fighting principles in their first weeks of training. The concept of trading altitude for speed, using high-velocity maneuvers to gain positional advantage, and exploiting aircraft performance at extreme speeds. These are fundamental to modern air combat. The P-51 Mustang, optimized for the tactics Jagger helped to develop, becomes the most successful American fighter of World War II. North American Aviation produces 15.86 Mustangs. They destroy 4.50 enemy aircraft in air combat, more than any other Allied fighter type. The 357th Fighter Group, Jagger's unit, achieves the highest kill ratio of any American fighter group in Europe, 5.7 to 1. They destroy 609 enemy aircraft while losing 106 of their own. Their success directly results from early adoption of energy fighting tactics. Don Blakesley, who fought to validate Jorger's accidental discovery, retires as a colonel with 15.5 kills. He never receives the Medal of Honor, despite being recommended 3 times. He tells an interviewer in 1989, "The real heroes were kids like Jorger who figured things out when everyone told them they were wrong. I just had enough rank to make sure people listened." William Keeptainer, the general who overruled his staff and authorized the new tactics, retires as a lieutenant general. His February 1944 directive is studied at military meets as an example of leadership, the willingness to challenge doctrine when evidence demands it. The German pilots who survived the war speak respectfully of their American opponents. Johannes Steinhoff, who became a general in the post-war Luftwaffe, writes in 1977, "By mid-1944, American fighter pilots had surpassed us in tactics and aggressiveness. They learned faster than we could adapt, the Mustang pilots especially. They were exceptional." The lesson extends beyond aviation. Innovation often comes from unexpected sources. The teenager from West Virginia with minimal education saw something experienced officers missed. The system nearly rejected his discovery because it contradicted established doctrine. How many other innovations have been lost because they came from the wrong person or challenged the wrong assumptions? How many lives could have been saved if organizations were better at recognizing truth, regardless of its source? Jorger dies on December 7, 2020, at age 97. His obituary in the New York Times calls him the most famous test pilot of his generation. It mentions breaking the sound barrier. It mentions his combat record. It doesn't mention that he accidentally revolutionized air combat by doing something everyone said was impossible. Sometimes the greatest innovations come not from careful planning, but from